So hey guys, I thought I'd take you along and dive into some more of these old vintage tools here that came from my great-grandparents. I'm having a lot of fun going through this stuff. I've been going down all these little different rabbit holes, trying to figure out when some of these tools were made, what some of these tools were even used for. So as I've been going through some of these tools, there's definitely been some in here that I've had no idea, and I've actually stumbled across what they do in the process of trying to figure out how to use some of these tools. This is one item that I saw in this toolbox, and I was trying to figure out what it exactly does. Some of you guys will know darn well what this does, and I think there's a lot of people that probably would have no clue. I've never seen anything like this. You can see there's a little bit of a rolling bar here that pinches something in. You can see there's a groove that you can slide something in, and then there's this clamp down here. Looks like my great-grandfather must have got a little inventive here. Just took a nail here to make this clamp work. I'm guessing that bar bent or fell out or something. So in the comments below, take your best guess, and then we'll reveal what this is here a little bit later in this video. So it's definitely been a very difficult process to really narrow some of these tools down. I've been looking through some old ads and being able to pinpoint and see some of the changes. Been looking through some old patents for some of these tools to be able to narrow things down. And then there are some decent resources out there, but I'm really amazed. I mean, these tools in the grand scheme of things aren't really that old. A lot of these tools date back to late 1800s, early 1900s. So, you know, just a little over 100 years. And I'm amazed on how little documentation there is on some of these. You can kind of narrow some things down. You can find a lot of these things on eBay, but I always have to wonder how reliable some of these sellers are. Are they trying to fudge the numbers a little bit better to make their product a little bit more sellable? Or is it actually a decent antique dealer that's got some knowledge in this stuff, or is it someone that just picked up a couple of these things at a garage sale or an estate sale? So in this process of searching for some of this stuff, I've definitely noticed that there's a pretty big community around some of the hand saws. So in the description below, I'm going to put some links to some of these sites that can really help you narrow things down based off the medallion, some of the bolt patterns on some of the saws. I think it's pretty reliable resources out there, and a great resource if you're trying to figure out a little bit more information on your saws. So before we move on, I really want to say thank you to all you guys that in the last video we were going through some of these tools. I had a question related around this little thumb plane and this rounded serrated blade and some of the uses. You guys were fantastic. Knew exactly what it was, helped shine some light on that. Uncle Hosh shared a fantastic link, which I added to the description of the last video. Really can't thank you guys enough. Kind of got the wheels turn a little bit. I don't really know a lot about violin making. I know it's a very delicate. It's all about letting that instrument resonate, unlike an electric guitar, a solid body electric guitar of today. A much different process, so trying to understand that. So we ended up going down to my grandparents' house yesterday, had dinner, and I kind of dove through the trunks a little bit. They have several of these trunks of some of the old violins, some of the tools that were being used, and kind of peek through that a little bit just to get a better understanding of some of that. One last thing here real quick. In the last video I ended up sharing this plane here. I didn't really get an opportunity to dive into it too much and look at it, but I ended up looking at it a little bit better light here. And this is actually a Stanley plane. And you can see the patent number that's stamped on here. I ended up looking this back. And this plane actually dates all the way back to 1892. It's a Stanley number 24. So if you take a look at this toolbox, I've seen a lot of them like this. Sort of this design, nice little handle and everything. On one end there's actually a little slot cut here for sliding, looks like 2 different saws in to hold those in place. So inside this box here we have a lot of different saws actually. We've got an old bow saw here. I don't see any markings on this, so I'm not really super familiar with this one here. And then there's a lot of these old hand saws here. So these old saws are just fantastic. They feel so nice in the hand. You can just tell they took a lot of care and pride in making these. I just love these medallions. I think that just says a lot just by putting that on their saw. And it's so helpful now to be able to figure out who made these saws. There's some stampings a lot of times on these blades, but like this one here, I can only see it in just the right lighting. It's very difficult to be able to make out. But of course, these medallions a lot of times can end up being cross-swapped between different saws. So you got to look at a couple other characteristics when trying to track some of these down. There's certain bolt patterns that are used in certain years or by certain manufacturers. Also the shape of the handle. This one here, you can actually see this ended up breaking off a little bit. But can really tell you a lot. Like this one, for example, when I look at this medallion, I can tell this one was at the latest manufactured in 1917. Kind of neat little saw, little keyhole saw here. You can see the tip ended up breaking off. Here's another little keyhole saw with the tip still sitting on there. But I can make out the markings there and the markings on this. A lot of these are keen cutter saws in here. There's some like E.C. Atkins. This one here has Warren Superior on this. And this is actually a Harry Diston saw, but this is actually a second run of their saw, so not their top-notch quality saw. Also on these saws, you'll notice down here in the heel of the blade, you'll see a number stamp. This one's got 11, this one's got a 9, this one's got a 10. And that's very helpful information. You can tell those guys sharpened their saws a lot, and this was a big key critical thing for the information. It tells you the number of teeth per inch, so it helps you figure out what type of file size you need for doing that. And then the next part is you just got to figure out what type of cut that saw is set up for, whether it's a cross cut or a rip cut. If you're not familiar with what that is, the best way I know how to kind of reference it is I always think firewood related stuff or chainsaw stuff. You know, when you're milling wood and you're cutting with the grain, that's, you know, a rip saw, and a cross grain is just like when you're kind of bucking up logs, cutting firewood and stuff. So these are some pretty neat saws. My grandfather's got one of the other, I think there was two other keen cutters that look like they match the set. One of those backing saws that got a little rib that runs here to really kind of stiffen up that blade. But I'll tell you what, the few little test cuts, I did a little test sharpening on one of these saws and use it. Man, this thing just, it feels good in the hand. It cuts so nice. These saws are just fantastic. So these are some Jorgensen clamps. These are really a very functional clamp that can adjust to all different shapes and sizes, all different materials. These were made by Adjustable Clamp Company out of Chicago, Illinois. Unfortunately, I think I heard that they just ended up closing their doors in 2016. I believe, don't hold me to this, but I believe it was being run by the great-great-grandson of the original founder of this. And I thought I had read something kind of talking about, you know, if you build such a good quality product, you buy it once and it's very hard to have a sustainable business, which unfortunately I think is, you know, the direction a lot of stuff has gone today. I've heard a very similar story about the old International Harvester Cub Cadets. They just, you know, they were so bulletproof that you bought the thing once and you never had to buy them again. So, and that's kind of the case here. I mean, these things are top notch. Not a lot to even really go wrong with them. These ones are metal threads, so you know, kind of keeping these oiled and lubed up. These ones actually have the wood threads here, but really a nice clamp. And then a lot of times you'll end up finding stampings somewhere on them. Some of them I find down here on the ends. They seem to be a little bit of random. This one here just looks like it just kind of, I mean, it wasn't lined up very nice, stamped on. This one's a little bit nicer. See a little bit of etching, but some great clamps for all sorts of different projects and to have in the toolbox. So a couple of you guys mentioned timber framing stuff. These definitely scream timber framing to me. These look like a handmade handle here, a little auger bit. I did end up doing one little test run with this. A lot of blowout around the edges here. I'm going to definitely have to go in here and sharpen this thing up. But that was kind of a neat little thing. Little Rawhide Mallet. These are fantastic. I don't think a lot of people use these very much, but I've been reading a lot of great things about these. Less damage to your material and using them, less noise. Just a great little solution here. This Stanley number 18 bevel, fantastic little tool here. I could definitely see myself using this, getting custom angles. And one little neat little thing here I noticed is my grandfather's initials are pounded in here, KM right there. I've seen that on a couple different tools here. So really a nice little tool here. I just got to probably go in, oil, and clean this up just a little bit and be able to use that. Then another little Lufkin tape here. This one's on a little fabric cord here. We got to kind of come in here and wind things up yourself. I believe this one's got 25 feet stamped on it, so that's a pretty neat little thing to have in there. So, you know, looking through some of the old magazine stuff, I see Lufkin tapes advertised quite a bit. So let's pull out that mystery tool that I showed you guys in the beginning of the video and see if you were right. That was a saw vise was, well, it was a little bit of a stumble across thing. I was starting to look at getting some files here to start sharpening some of these saws so I can do some projects with them down the road here. And I was like, well, I probably should get a saw vise in the process. And I started going through and finding some old vintage saw vises. And in that process of scrolling through, all of a sudden I noticed, I'm like, wait a minute, that looks like that item that's sitting in the toolbox. I wasn't sure if it was something to bend metal, or I had all these different theories and things, but the placement of where that clamp was really threw me through a loop, and just happened to stumble across that. So anyways, we'll wrap this video up. Hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks for watching.